And the reason I say it's so difficult is because that opens the door to a whole lot of baggage. I pinned a question to my Twitter thread a couple weeks ago that pretty much opened the door for anybody to ask any question that they wanted. And this was the very first question that came in. How do you motivate yourself to study after working all day and putting the kids to bed and it's 9 p.m.? Serious question. Although when I feel the heart behind that question, that little smiley face is probably like one of those tear sad faces, right? And I relate straight to this. Those of you that know me know I have a big family, a whole bunch of young kids. So I know what it's like to come home and they just want you and you're consumed until you finally get them all down to bed and you're just like, I'm done, check please. So how do you get motivated to study in that situation? And another question that came in after that was, would you still have gone for your CCIE if you were to do it now? The answer is yes, but I would approach it way differently than I did back when I was a single guy. The first thing I want to do is make sure I throw a big assumption out there. The average American watches 4 hours of television a day. Over a lifespan, that's 13 years of life. And I'm going to make a big assumption that that's not you. And if it is you, then that's my number one tip. Stop watching TV, whether it's 4 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour. That is just filler. It's a waste of time that a lot of people say, well, I'm relaxing, and I get it. I get the need to unplug. But what I find a lot of people doing is they use TV to fill the time that they don't know what to do with, meaning they get home and all the kids are there. You don't know what to do. You know you can't study. You're kind of like, click, and on goes the TV, and there goes the whole evening to that. You have to twist that into intentional time. And that's where I'm going to take you to my second tip, which is probably the most difficult, and it sounds so obvious, but probably the most difficult one that I have. Plan a schedule with your spouse. And the reason I say it's so difficult is because that opens the door to a whole lot of baggage. Meaning, when you bring your spouse into it, that is the number one way to work with it, whether it be your wife or your husband. If you've got kids, if you've got a family, they're going to be necessary to join you in this journey of studying for your CCIE or studying for whatever, doing whatever it is. And if you try and go around them, and I'm not going to say it's not possible, you can, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that in a good-ish kind of way. But if you try and do it without involving them, is probably a better way of saying it, you're going to find yourself struggling against weird forces that you just don't know are there. It's tough to do, but literally it's going to be sitting down with them and saying, this is what I'm going after. I think it's going to be good for our family, blah, 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 blah. And how can we do this? And expect a lot of, back and forth. That's the biggest, I'll just confess my biggest problem is when I do that, I want okay, I'm right there. I support you. Let's do this. And that's where the baggage comes in. I'm like, this is going to take some time to figure out. If you're willing to put in the time, you've got a solid study solution right there. It's planned, it's scheduled, and supported by someone who can actually help with the kids. Next up, get to something practical as soon as possible. When you're studying, a lot of this stuff is conceptual. Like, I'll just take the OSI model as a simple example. Learning the OSI model without actually doing something that relates to it is brutal. It's rote memorization. Nobody wants to do that. So a lot of times I'll skip straight to where it's actually asking me to do something. It says, okay, do this. And I go, I don't know what that even means. So I'll go back and research, what does that mean? Which makes then the not so practical stuff a little more digestible because I'm doing it to get to something practical. And that way I can learn concepts that I can do, because at the heart, a lot of times network engineers are doers. We want to do something. And if it's all concept, we're not doing anything. So get to something practical quickly. Don't wait to feel motivated. That's one of the big misnomers when I see, how do you get yourself going at 9 p.m.? Well, a lot of times you're kind of waiting for that feeling like, I feel like studying, which does come. I'm not saying it's never there, but it's not going to be there consistently as creating a plan or a schedule. As you know, I talk like this all the time. This is the kind of training that I do, and I'm not motivated for a lot of it. A lot of you are like, how can that be? You're always so peppy. Well, yeah, but a lot of that starts with me sitting at that desk over there with a book going, okay, what is, I don't get that. And I'm jumping up and down. I'm walking around because I have to force the motivation. I have to force myself to get through it and not to get distracted with something else. And that brings me to something I did a few years back, and that's flip that study time in the evening to the morning. I know. I know. Network engineers aren't morning people, but I'm telling you, waiting till the evening is setting yourself up, or I'll say for myself, was setting myself up for failure. I didn't like waking up early in the morning, and I still kind of don't. I would always love to sleep in, but my alarm goes off at 4 a.m. every single morning because I know that's my best time, and that's where I'm going to dive into something like this. The only sub-tip I'll give you on that flip to the morning is make sure that you have a plan of exactly what you're going to do. Because if I'll speak to myself, if that alarm goes off at 4 in the morning and I don't know exactly what I have to do, I'm hitting the snooze button because I'm like, oh, I don't even know. I'll just get to that later, right? Fail. If the morning still doesn't work for you, then schedule a 10-minute evening thing. What do I mean by that? I mean that instead of saying, I'm going to spend 10 minutes studying in the evening, I'm going to force the 10 minutes, schedule a 10-minute thing, meaning look at whatever concept you're studying and say, I'm going to turn on the router and set the host name. That's something you can do in 10 minutes. I'm gonna, whatever it is, it's just a thing that you commit yourself to do. You plan it, you think about it, and you set it that it's only gonna take 10 minutes. That's usually all it takes to get me started, is if I get myself in there to do the 10-minute thing, then I'm going to keep going after that. That's how I perk my interest, if you will, to get studying in the evening. Now, with all of these things, I don't know if you've noticed any one of the themes through them all. It's intentionality, it's schedule, it's plan. It's, at the end of the day, discipline, which is kind of a word people like to avoid nowadays. They want to feel that rush, feel motivated, and the feeling will come through discipline, which has no feeling at all associated with it. It's misery, but at the same time, it's the beginning of something great that you want to do. Every technology I've had to learn is brutal when I first get started until I start that flywheel going and going, okay, I get it. And then it becomes exciting and the motivation follows the discipline to get it started. Being planned, being intentional, being disciplined. That's the best way to find the motivation to get going.